You're listening to Kan Podcasts.
About 26 years ago, when my father Ephraim still had two legs and a wicked sense of humor, I took him in my Jeep to the mountain above Kibbutz Sura. The so-called Samson's tomb was there at the peak among droopy pine trees, overlooking Eshtaol, where possibly, as the Bible says, Samson was born and raised. This was his country, the land that wasn't yet ruled by kings, before the Davidic dynasty reigned, before there were even Judeans and Jews, when there were 12 tribes and the usurping Israelites were trying to make this their homeland. Out here, it was the hinterland, the volatile border between the tribe of Dan and the Philistines. Right here, right below this mountain, you can see the Sorek River Valley, where the Philistines clashed with the Israelites. Samson, a biblical golem, ended up killing himself with the Philistines when he pulled the temple in Gaza down on them. But somehow his tribe members brought his body up here for burial alongside his father, Manoach. So Papa and I had a look at the tomb. It was a simple square slab. I don't recall any signs or markings, just a tomb, the shape of a king-size mattress. It was faced with cheap gray marble slabs. Stones were placed on top. One caught my eye. Could it be? Yes, it was a small capital that must have once adorned a thin column. It was severely eroded, but it was a capital all the same. I picked it up. The tomb let go a low moaning sound, and the marble slabs started to fall off around me, on me. I looked at Papa, and our eyes were equally wide. I dropped the stone, then picked it up and put it back. We ran off down the slope about 30 meters, laughing and shaking our heads. "Did you hear that?" I said. "I sure did," he said. "Maybe it's the ghost of Samson." "You think?" "What do we do now?" he asked. "Maybe it's got Samson's power in it," I said. We walked back slowly and, looking around, snatched the stone from the top of the slab again, and I chucked it into the back seat of the Jeep and drove off, laughing and breathing hard. A few days later, Papa was admitted to the Hadassah University Medical Center. A year later, he had his foot amputated. My son, Yarden, believed it was all connected, and his trouble with his foot was because he had this Samson stone. "We have to return it. It's cursed," my son said. Many joys, but also troubled times this family has seen out here in the Elal Valley, where we built a home and a community in a village called Srigim. Through this, our Samson stone has laid in the garden and served as a special reminder for me and Papa and our sense of adventure and the amazing history of this land where on a hilltop near my house you can find Samson's tomb and a magical stone.
You read about Samson and you read about his birth. He was the strongest man that ever lived on earth.
Fast forward 16 years to the summer of 2013. My son Yarden was growing up, serious, contemplative, becoming religious. Maybe he was right. Maybe the Samson stone was cursed. Robberies, jeeps stolen and returned, dogs poisoned. Maybe all these were because we held that stone. I told him we would return the Samson stone, but wait a few days. I wanted to wait for his 21st birthday. Besides, I could see he was going to take it even without me. I took the stone to the basement, and with a chisel, I carved into the stone in ancient Hebrew, First Temple Hebrew, Yarden ben Aryeh ben Ephraim. Yarden, the son of Aryeh, the son of Ephraim. At dusk, I picked up my son from Kibbutz Beit Nir down the road. 2 IAF helicopters were flying low below the horizon in the British Park, landing near the mountain where the prophet Micha was born, just next to the ancient Byzantine farm. Biblical history and the modern Zionist state are in my backyard. Samson's tomb was just up the road. At home, I grabbed the Samson stone, put it in the thick army blanket, spread on the back seat of my old Jeep, and we set out. I tried to explain to him why I took the stone from the hills those many years ago with his grandfather. He said to me that I should have been an archaeologist if I loved stones so much, not a stone thief, a grave robber. He was 21. I remember my 21st birthday in the early 1980s. I was in basic training in the Nachal Corps, living in a tent near the Givat Olga beaches, and the girls of my army unit arrived and brought me a real cheeseburger. I can't remember many birthday presents, but I remember that one. I never hid my secular ways. I was giving my son my Samson stone to be returned to where Papa and I found it. I tried to convince my son not to lose sight of his goals. Jordy, when you were born exactly 21 years ago, it was the happiest day of my life. I wanted a son, and you have made me so proud of you, I told him. I don't want you to be proud of me, he said. I don't need you to be proud of me. He didn't seem interested in my life, not at all, but he was keen on Papa's faith, and I believed he sensed a connection to this spiritual journey, particularly now that he was embarking on one of his own. We turned off the road and drove past Dan's tomb, a site that had been turned into a religious shrine, and headed up the mountain. It was a bumpy, dusty road, and we were driving in the dark, up higher and higher. Occasionally, there were hand-painted signs saying, Samson's tomb. I didn't remember anything like this 16 years ago. At one point, I got out to lock the hubs and put it into four-wheel drive. Yarden was humming a nigun. What are you singing, I asked. A song, I don't know, he said. The old Jeep inched its way up the mountain till we got to the peak and the tomb. We got out and had a good look around. I retold Jordy the story about how Papa and I came up here all those years ago, and how we found the stone sitting on top, and how we lifted it and the marble fell off, and we ran away laughing, scared we disturbed Samson's ghost, but taking the stone anyway. The site was different now. It was painted with whitewash and had 2 vaults on top. There were boxes of prayer books, as the site had become a shrine for the ultra-Orthodox. It had been developed, too, flattened, paved. The lights of Beit Shemesh twinkled in the valley below. We were alone. I retrieved the Samson stone from the Jeep and put it back on top where I'd found it back in 1997. Yarden suggested I say a prayer. He pulled out a large book of Psalms. Just open it to any page and say the prayer you see, he said. I opened it. It was Psalm 60, a prayer for deliverance. You have made the land tremble and you have cut it open. Now heal its wounds because it is falling apart. From his sanctuary, God has said, Ephraim is my helmet and Judea my royal scepter. We paused. Ephraim? My father's name? It was a sign. Did the Philistines think they would shout in triumph over me? With God on our side, we will win. Just as I finished, there was a rustle in the bushes below. A long wail, creepy, then more and more. It was the howl of jackals, and they were getting closer and closer. Let's get out of here, Yarden said. I got the Jeep running and said to him, this is beyond surreal, but it's the truth. It is really happening. First Ephraim is mentioned, and now these jackals. We drive off down the mountain along the terribly bumpy road. But by the time we reached the bottom, the old Jeep is overheated, steam blowing from under the hood. I stopped at the bottom by Kibbutz Sarah, opened up the hood, and steam shot up. The pipes were all burst. We limped the Jeep home, stopping at least 5 times on the way to pour water into the radiator.
Delilah cut poor Samson's hair, what an evil thing to do. Well, you can call me Samson from now on, 'cause you're my weakness too. And we're going down in
A decade has passed since that night of ghosts and old stones and jackals and mountaintops in the Holy Land. We're coming up on Shavuot, and Samson is on my mind since we read about him in the Haftarah. I am in search of Samson's ghost and curious about the Samson stone. My old Jeep, the same one I've been driving for 27 years, is still kicking, and I take it past Kibbutz Sarah. About a kilometer past the main gate, there is the north road that heads up to the mountains above the kibbutz. The view from the Tzorah Ridge is tremendous, overlooking the wide Sorek Valley. Below lies the city of Beit Shemesh with its rooftops and yeshivas and malls and industrial zones. The train from Beit Shemesh still runs down the valley on the same path as the old Ottoman railway down to the sea. From here, one can see Pleshet, the land of the Philistines, just like Samson must have when he was moved by the divine spirit, and where he went down to Timnah and fell in love. And I chuckle, recalling how a Baptist preacher from Georgia once told me, Samson sure did like them Philistine ladies. Atop the mountain is Samson's tomb, and it has changed again. The old whitewashed cement grave is gone, replaced by a fancy double-vaulted tomb, all covered in marble, with a place for candles and cupboards filled with holy books. And a constant crowd of worshippers. Couples sit on plastic chairs reading sacred text. Married women, their hair covered, rock back and forth before the tomb. A fellow pulls close in his pickup truck and pops in for a quick prayer. 4 strapping young men show up, some in muscle shirts, others dressed like construction workers, their tzitziot flying around them as they join hands and dance in a circle, frenziedly, reciting Tikkun HaKlili, a compilation of psalms arranged by Rebbe Nachman Breslov. Come join us, they beseech me. We're going to the tomb of Dan next. We're Bratzlavers. Then an elderly woman reaches the top, her arm bleeding from a fall. I come up to her, wearing my overalls and straw hat, and say, I don't have any water to offer you, but here's some moonshine whiskey. She laughs. I may not have seen the ghost of Samson this trip, In her eyes, maybe she did. On the tomb is a plaque reading, Samson's grave, Messiah of his generation, and his father Manoach. These are, of course, not the actual graves of Samson or his father Manoach, or of Dan, the son of Jacob. Who knows who's buried in these mountains? Perhaps an honored sheikh. Archaeologists tell me the graves suddenly appeared 30 years ago and were quickly sanctified by believers who pray, perhaps asking for babies for their barren daughters, just like the nameless mother of Samson was blessed. I wanted to get some professional opinion, so I went to Boaz Zissou. He's a professor of classical archaeology at Bar Ilan University. And I went up to the grave above Tzura, and there's a lot of people up there praying and everything. But as an archaeologist, do you think that this could be the grave of Samson?
Let's say that Samson is historical character.
Okay.
And then let's go to the sources. So first of all, the Bible in Judges 16:31. The Bible states clearly that Samson was buried between Tzora and Eshtaol in the tomb of Manoach, his father. So not at Tzora, not at Eshtaol, somewhere in between. Tzora is quite surely identified at Tel Tzora, and in this case, Arabic name of the site preserved the ancient name. So we have good identification in this case. Eshtaol is also identified as Shua, which was a site which preserved the name nearby, east of Tzora. So in this case, we have two, let's say, well-accepted geographical, historical identifications, so the tomb should be in between, not at one of them. Again, if you ask an archaeologist, and I'm an archaeologist, tombs always located outside ancient settlements. In this case, the modern tradition points to a location which is within an ancient settlement. So it shouldn't be there. Moreover, we always go and check the Arab traditions. And in this case, we have two very interesting traditions which locate a tomb nearby in this region, but not at Tzora. And both traditions locate the tomb somewhere in between these two sites. One of them is at Khirbet Lin, which is a bit north of Tzora, and actually we can say that it lies in between these two sites. And this tradition was preserved by Victor Guérin, the famous French explorer. And the second tradition was again preserved by another French explorer, Charles Hermonganot, and he located the tomb of Shimshon, Samson, at Abu Mizar, which is near Tel Bet Shemesh. So in any case, we have two locations in this area preserved by the Arabs, but not at Tel Tzora. And again, if you ask an archaeologist, I know the site. I know the site from the 80s. In the 80s, this tradition just started. So if you follow the development of this cultic place, you can see that it's a pretty modern tradition created in the last 30, 40 years. It's not an ancient tradition. It's a modern one.
What is that site? Is it like a sheikh's tomb?
It's not even a typical sheikh's tomb. It's a modern creation. Sorry, Aryeh. Sorry to disappoint your audience, but it's a pretty modern creation.
So this whole phenomena that you talk about over the past 30, 40 years of Kever Tzadikim, of these righteous tombs, is this something that's new in the past generation or what?
Well, I would say that humans have this need to create sanctuaries and cultic places, and humans everywhere, in Christianity, in Judaism, in Islam. So it's not something new. So in this case, and also sometimes, it has to do with local groups, local sects, need of local groups to create cultic sites. So, I'm not an anthropologist, so I'm not following exactly the creation of these places. But what I can say from the archaeological point of view, sorry, but there is no base for this identification. And from the geographical point of view, the only thing that I can say for sure is that we know where Tzorah and where Eshtaol were located, and the tomb has to be in between. And from the, let's say the Arab folklore, so again, we have two traditions in this region, but not at the tomb, which is now regarded as the holy tomb of Shimshon of Samson.
Run, Samson, run. Delilah's on her way. Run, Samson, run. You ain't got time to stay. Run, Samson, run. On your mark, you better start. I'd sooner trust a hungry lion than a gal with a cheating heart.
We read about Samson in the book of Judges. He was undoubtedly different from the other judges of his day, like Yiftach or Gideon. He was a total individualist who never amassed an army around him like Gideon or Deborah, and always worked alone, proving his heroism and might, and ended up with 4 whole chapters in the Bible, more than any other judge. When I first came to this mountaintop, I was young, a son, a new father, seeking adventure. Now, at this incredible time for the Jewish people, we have never been so strong. We are the overdogs, not the underdog, like Samson, who was more like a golem strongman. Have we internalized our considerable military might? We mark 75 years of an independent Jewish state, and yet sometimes still can't seem to shake our deep existential insecurity. It's part of our soul. Martin Buber calls it our unconscious national soul, a soul that's compressed 4,000 years of Jewish history within it. There is a thread of Samson throwing through me, my father, and my son. We are the perpetual strangers in this world, the Jewish sense of not being a nation like other nations, a state of eternal non-belonging, hovering between divine mission and loneliness, just like Samson. And even though his tomb has been covered in marble and asphalt and concrete, the depths of his legend are not forgotten. Sometimes you can hear it growling. So if this isn't the real tomb of Samson, where is it? Archaeologist Professor Zissou tells me Tzorah is real, and so is Eshtaol, so it's somewhere in between. The 19th century French explorer called Victor Gurien recounted local lore saying it was at Khirbet Islim, just next to Eshtaol. So I looked for it there, just a JNF park and no sign of Samson. Maoz Chaviv, a kibbutznik from Tzorah and a local tour guide, tells me he once discovered an ancient tomb a few decades ago on the slopes below ancient Tzorah, which fits the description of Samson's tomb. But by the time he returned with experts, bulldozers had smothered it over to make way for the industrial zone, about the same spot where the IKEA now stands. Oh well. As I leave the mountain, the radio is playing Carefree Highway because the singer Gordon Lightfoot has just passed away. I bounce down the trail, choosing my path between the ruts to the Sorek Valley in its splendor. Some of the wheat fields have already been cut, their stalks ready to be bundled into bales. I am thinking that exactly this time of the year, in Samson's day, they were gathering the wheat into sheaves. The radio suddenly cuts the song. Red alert in Sderot, near Am, seek shelter. And I'm thinking, more than 3,000 years ago, Samson was in Gaza, and the pain never dies. Let me avenge them for my blindness, he said. Some things never change. Samson, the hero, please forgive me for taking the stone. It's back now. All is good. Life is honey. And what is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion? Happy Shavuot.
בין הכרמים שמשון הלך בדרך לתמנתה וירא אריה שואג בסבך וישסו כגדי ויעבור שמשון שנית בדרך לתמנתה וירא נחיל דבורים בגב וירד הדבש של פיו ומה מתוק יותר מדבש מעז יותר מליש חידה היא ואין איש אשר יפתור את חידתי יופייך דלילה מתוק מדבש אהבתי אזי הפקדתי בחיקך את סוד חיי וגם